This was necessary and reasonable, for the wine at the farm was poor, and I had eaten my rabbit to the sole accompaniment of water. I had 3 martinis, and toward the end of the third I distinctly felt that my Parsifal was about to begin. I had my plan. I got up on the pretext of having to go to the toilet and quietly left by another door, breathing deeply the air of freedom, which was for me that of the entire sky. I was stirred by the joyful thrill of feeling myself suddenly alone once more. I had a fantastic plan for this night, and this plan I called my, quote, Parsifal, end of quote. I took a taxi that brought me to the student's residence and had it wait. It would take me just an hour. My Parsifal required that I make myself very handsome. I took a long shower, gave myself a very close shave, glued down my hair as much as possible, putting paint varnish on it again. I knew the serious inconveniences of this, and even that it would spoil my hair a little, but my Parsifal was worth this sacrifice, and more. I applied powdered lead around my eyes. This made me look particularly devastating in the Argentine tango manner. Rudolph Valentino seemed to me at that time to be the prototype of masculine beauty. I put on very pale, cream-colored trousers and an Oxford gray coat. As for the shirt, I had an idea that appeared to me to put the definitive touch of elegance to my outfit. The shirt was of ecru silk, a silk fine as onion skin and so transparent that on looking attentively one could see through it the rather well-defined black imperial eagle of the hair in the middle of my chest. But the outline was too clear, so I took off the shirt, which had been freshly ironed, and squeezed it between my 2 hands, folding and pressing it into a bunch between my closed fists. I put this bundle of wrinkled silk under my trunk and got on top of it so as to crush it even more. The crumpled effect that resulted was ravishing, especially when I put it on and fastened a stiff, smooth collar of immaculate whiteness to it. Having finished dressing, I jumped into the taxi again, stopped to buy a gardenia which the florist pinned to my lapel, and then gave the driver the address of the Florida, a fashionable ballroom where I had never yet been, but which I knew was patronized by the most exclusive crowd in Madrid. I intended to have supper there all alone, and to choose with scrupulous care the necessary feminine material among the most beautiful, the most luxuriously dressed women in order to carry out, come what may, that mad, irresistible thing, that thing almost without sensation and yet oppressive with pent-up eroticism, that maddening thing which since the day before I had named my Parsifal. I had no idea where the Florida was, and each time the taxi slowed down I thought I had arrived, and my anxiety grew so anguishing that it made me shut my eyes. I sang Parsifal at the top of my lungs. Good heavens, what a night it was going to be. I knew it. It was going to age me by 10 years. The effect of the 3 martinis had totally vanished, and my brain was turning toward grave and severe thoughts. My wickedness was losing its edge with the alcohol, which I was already theoretically, quote, against, end of quote. Alcohol confuses everything, gives free rein to the most pitiful subjectivism and sentimentalism. And afterwards one remembers nothing, and if one does, it is worse. Everything that one thinks while in a state of intoxication appears to one to have the touch of genius, and afterwards one is ashamed of it. Drunkenness equalizes, makes uniform, and depersonalizes. Only beings composed of nothingness and mediocrity are capable of elevating themselves a little with alcohol. The man of evil and of genius bears the alcohol of his old age already absorbed in his own brain. I hesitated. Was I going to execute my Parsifal with or without alcohol? The pre-nocturnal sky of Madrid knows clouds of a fantastic and poisoned mineral blue that can be found only in the paintings of Patinier. And to the warmed-over rabbit that I had eaten at the farm was now added the venom of that delicately blue-tinged color of depilated armpits toward which I was going to direct my activity that evening. With very definite ideas on the subject in the back of my head, I took advantage of the little clearings which intoxication left for brief moments in my mind to organize the details that would enable me to execute this sublime and absolutely original erotic fantasy which made my heart beat like hammer blows every time I thought about it. To realize satisfactorily what I wanted to do and what nothing would prevent me from doing, to realize my Parsifal, I needed 5 very elegant women and a 6th who would help us with everything. None of them needed to get undressed, and neither did I. It would even be desirable to have these women keep their hats on. The important thing was for all but 2 of them to have depilated armpits. I had brought a considerable amount of money, even though I believed my powers of seduction already to be considerable. I arrived at the Florida. Arrived there much too early. I settled myself before a table and looked around. I was well placed to see everything and had my back to a wall, which was indispensable. I came back immediately to the same question. Did I have to get drunk or not to carry out my adventure? For all the practical preliminaries, establishing contact with the women, putting them at ease with one another, finding where the thing was to take place, perhaps inviting a couple of them into a private room and having them take charge of everything as well remunerated accomplices. For all these preliminary steps, alcohol would obviously be a precious means of overcoming the timidity of the first moments. But afterwards, it would be exactly the contrary. What I would need afterwards was a sharp eye to see everything at once. Afterwards, from the moment my Parsifal began, no lucidity would be too great, no inquisitor's glance sufficiently severe and perfidious to judge, condemn, and decide between the hell and the glory of the scenes and situations verging on disgust and yet so desired, so beautiful, so frightfully humiliating for the 7 protagonists of the Parsifal that I was going to direct. And how? Before the cocks of dawn, with the agonized and rusty notes of their first crowing, were capable of raising the festooned, red and abominable coxcomb of remorse in our 7 imaginations exhausted from the acutest pleasures. The head waiter was standing in front of me, waiting for me to end my daydreaming. "What will the senor have?" Without a moment's hesitation, I answered, "Bring me a rabbit with onions, warmed over." But instead of warmed over rabbit, I simply ate a quarter of a chicken, infinitely sad and insipid, accompanied by a bottle of champagne, which was followed by a second one. While I was eating the chicken wing, people began to arrive. Until then, the large boîte de nuit had been empty except for myself, the waiters, the orchestra, and a couple of professional dancers who, as they danced, were putting on an act of quarreling. With a quick glance, I eliminated the possibility of using this dancing girl, recognizing that she did not offer the slightest interest for me. She was out of the question for the Parsifal. She was too beautiful, terribly and disagreeably healthy, and totally devoid of elegance. I have never in my life met a very beautiful woman who was at the same time very elegant, these two things excluding each other by definition. In the elegant woman, there's always a studied compromise between her ugliness, which must be moderate, and her beauty, which must be evident. But simply evident without going beyond this exact measure. The elegant woman can and must get along without that beauty of face whose continuous flashing is like a persistent trumpet call. On the other hand, if the elegant woman's face must possess its exact quota of the stigmas of ugliness, fatigue, and disequilibrium, which with the arrogance of her eloquence will acquire the intriguing and imposing category of carnal cynicism, the elegant woman will necessarily and inevitably have to have hands, arms, feet, and underarms of an exaggerated beauty and as exhibitionistic as possible. The breasts are of absolutely no importance in an elegant woman. They do not count. If they are good, so much the better. If they are bad, so much the worse. In the rest of her body, I exact only one thing for her to be able to attain this category of elegance which we are considering. This single thing is the special conformation of the hip bones, which absolutely must be very prominent, pointed, so to speak, so that one knows they are there, under no matter what dress, present and aggressive. You think that the line of the shoulders is of prime importance? This is not true. I grant all freedom to this line, and no matter how much or in what way it might disconcert me, I should be grateful to it. The expression of the eyes, yes, very, very important. It must be very, very intelligent, or look as if it were. An elegant woman with a stupid expression is inconceivable. On the other hand, nothing is more appropriate to a perfect beauty than a stupid expression. The Venus of Milo is the most obvious example of this. The mouth of the elegant woman should, by preference, be disagreeable and antipathetic. But suddenly, and as if by miracle, either at the approach of ecstasy or as it half opens in response to a choice and infrequent impulse of her soul, it must be capable of acquiring an angelic expression which makes her momentarily unrecognizable to you. The elegant woman's nose. Elegant women have no noses. It is beautiful women who have noses. The hair of the elegant woman must be healthy. It is the only thing about the elegant woman that must be healthy. The elegant woman, moreover, must be totally tyrannized by her elegance, and her dresses and her jewels, while they are her chief raison d'etre, must also constitute the chief reason for her exhaustion and her wasting away. This is why the elegant woman is hard in her sentimental passions and only faintly aroused in her loves. This is precisely why bold, avid, refined, and unsentimental eroticism is the only kind of eroticism to cling with luxury to her luxury, just as the luxury of her dresses and her jewels clings exhaustingly to the luxurious body, which is made only to mistreat them and to wear them with the supreme luxury of disdain. And this is what I was getting at. Blasé, rich and luxurious disdain. For in order to carry through my Parsifal, I had to find this very evening exactly 6 disdainful, elegant women who could obey me to the letter without losing their glacial manners and without letting the mists or erotic emotion come and befog the continual luxury of their faces. 6 faces capable of experiencing pleasure ferociously, but with disdain. With my eyes open, my pupils dilated, I looked around me impatiently without being able to attach my attention to anything decisive. For there was not a single really elegant woman present, and far too many beautiful ones. I was becoming impatient. But understanding that I could not count too much on people's continuing to arrive in any considerable number, since the boîte was already crowded, I began to make concessions and to establish comparisons in order to make a choice among possibilities. For this first time, I could always content myself with an approximate Parsifal. But I knew at the same time that there's nothing worse than the approximately elegant. Does it even exist? It is as if someone tells you to encourage you to take medicine that it's almost a sweet. Suddenly 2 elegant women came in together, and by good fortune they sat down all by themselves at a table not far from mine that had just been left vacant. They were just what I wanted. I was still lacking 4. But not finding them, I returned to the observation of my 2 protagonists. The only thing I could not judge was their feet, which could not but be divine. Unless there were an absence of conformity about their anatomies, which struck me as inconceivable. Their hands rivaled one another in beauty, and all 4 of them were interlaced in a tangled knot, which their owners had formed with a cynical coldness that made me shudder. My second bottle of champagne had just made me moderately drunk, and my thoughts skipped beyond the grooves that I had laid out with my plan and into which I vainly tried to force them back and make them stay. Revolted by my own mental dispersion, which was beginning to vex my sense of order and continuity, I said to myself, "Look here, either you are Dali or you are not Dali. Come, be serious. You risk spoiling your Parsifal. Look over there. Is that an elegant wrist? Yes, but it would be necessary to combine it with a different mouth. There it is, a mouth you would like to match it to. Wrist, mouth, wrist. If one could put beings together in this way, as a matter of fact, one could put them together. Why don't you try? Choose carefully before you begin. Pull yourself together. Let's see how you'll like it. You've already found 3 elegant armpits. Look at them very well, at all 3 successively, and after that, without looking at anything else, you run with your glance and you pounce on that cold expression. Then on the mouth, on the more contemptuous of the 2 I have already chosen. Let's proceed in order. Have an armpit, another armpit, now quickly the mouth. But you've forgotten the second armpit, so start over again and pay attention. You see it clearly, don't you, the armpit? Oh yes, how elegant and fine it is. Here, then, is the armpit, the fine armpit. Now look at the expression, mouth. Now go back again, more slowly, mouth, expression, armpit, once more. Dwell longer on the expression, armpit, expression. Go back to the armpit. Go back to the expression. A little longer on the armpit this time. And now faster. Armpit, expression, armpit, expression, mouth, expression, mouth. My head was reeling in a desire to vomit, which this time could no longer be confused with the delicate and uncertain sensation of feeling oneself fall in love, made me get up with a disciplined sequence of movements. I politely asked the cigarette girl dressed as Louis XIV page where the dressing room was. I politely asked the cigarette girl dressed as a Louis XIV page where the dressing room was. She made me a sign which I did not see, and I went into a room where there was a desk covered with letters and typewritten sheets of paper. I braced myself with the palms of both hands on this table and vomited copiously. After this, I had a breathing spell, knowing that it was not over with, that my almost liturgical labor of throwing up everything had just begun. The cigarette girl, dressed as a Louis XIV page who had followed me, remained motionless in the doorway, watching me. I turned to her and, putting 50 pesetas in her cigarette tray, said to her beseechingly, "Let me finish." And locking the door behind me, I turned toward the table with the solemn and resolute palms on its surface. And locking the door behind me, I turned toward the table with a solemn and resolute step of one who was about to commit harakiri. And again, placing my 2 palms on its surface in an attitude identical to that of a while ago, I vomited again with an increased intensity. I was half conscious, and all the tastes of my soul, mingled with all those of my entrails, were coming out of my mouth. During the time that this lasted, I relived the experience of these 2 days of orgy, only backwards and all scrambled together, as though I had begun these 2 days over again, but in reverse, experiencing in a practical way the Christian maxim that, quote, "the last shall be first," end of quote. Everything was there: the warmed-over rabbit, the 2 delicate armpits, the wrists, the patent clouds, and again a piece of delicate armpit, and again a piece of chicken leg, and the cold expression, and again the warmed-over rabbit, expression, cold expression. Warmed over rabbit, delicate armpit. Warmed over rabbit, mushrooms. Olives, monarchy. Anarchy, anchovy, spaghetti. Chartreuse, spaghetti. Warmed over clams. Warmed over rabbit. Chartreuse, warmed over clams. Chartreuse, warmed over rabbit. Clams. Armpits. Spaghetti. Vermouth. Warmed over. Vermouth. Warmed over, warmed over. Vermouth. Vermouth. Bile. Warmed over. Vermouth. Bile. Warmed over. Bile. Warmed over. Bile. 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 Warmed over rabbit. Warmed over rabbit. Bile. 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 Warmed over rabbit. Vermouth. Bile. 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 Spaghetti. Bile. Clams. Bile. Warmed over rabbit. Bile. 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 Clams. Bile!